In the summer of 1929, the Ladies' Home Journal published an interview with one of the most famous businessmen in America. John J. Raskob helped run General Motors. He was about to put up the Empire State Building, and his recipe for wealth ran under a title that had no doubt in it anywhere. Everybody ought to be rich. The recipe was saving $15 a month, put into good common stocks, dividends reinvested. Do that for 20 years, Raskob said, and $3,600 of savings becomes $80,000, a fortune on a working family's budget. The market had been climbing for most of a decade, and nothing in the article suggested it would ever do anything else. 2 months later came October 1929. Then the worst crash in Wall Street's history. Then the Depression. 20 years after that, an investor sat down and ran the arithmetic on Raskob's plan. $15 a month, every month, straight through the crash and everything that followed. The saver was not wiped out. The money grew to about $8,500, a tenth of the promise. The man who ran those numbers had lived through every one of those months on the inside of Wall Street, and he put Raskob's story at the front of the most respected book on investing ever written. Because the trap was never the saving, and it was not even the stocks. It was the certainty. His name was Benjamin Graham, and he published the first edition of this book in 1949. That year, you could hardly have picked a less popular subject. In 1948, government researchers went door to door asking Americans what a sensible man should do with spare money. More than 9 in 10 said, "Not stocks." Half of them used the words, "not safe," a gamble. They were remembering 1929, and who could blame them? What happened next was the greatest rise in stock market history. Prices roughly tripled in a decade. And somewhere in that climb, the public changed its mind, then changed its vocabulary. By the 1960s, in the easy language of Wall Street, everyone who bought or sold anything had become an investor, whatever they bought, whatever the price, however they paid for it. Graham kept a headline from the country's leading financial paper, June 1962. "Small investors bearish. They are selling ODD lots short." Selling short means selling borrowed shares you don't own, hoping to buy them back cheaper after a fall. These were amateurs betting small change on a market drop, and the paper called them investors. Graham said that was a contradiction on the order of spendthrift misers. He also noted, with a collector's pleasure, when the bet was placed, the market had already fallen hard and was about to turn and run upward for years. About the worst moment for that bet the calendar could offer. So hold the two pictures side by side. In 1948, with businesses selling cheap, the public called buying them a gamble. 15 years later, with prices triple and the danger grown back, the same purchase had become investing. The word had changed sides. The things themselves had not changed at all, only their price tags and the certainty of the people holding them. Graham had written the answer to all this back in 1934, in a textbook built from the wreckage of the crash. And in this book, he repeats it word for word. An investment operation is one which, upon thorough analysis, promises safety of principal and an adequate return. Operations not meeting these requirements are speculative. 3 parts, and each one is load-bearing. Thorough analysis. You examine the thing, the business behind the ticker, what it earns, what it owes, the way you would examine a shop before buying it. Safety of principal. The first job is not to lose the money you started with. And an adequate return. Adequate. That is the scandal in the sentence. He is telling you that the honest name for chasing more than adequate, on hope alone, is something else. Everything that fails the test is speculation. And Graham refuses to call speculation a sin. Some of it the world needs. Somebody has to stake the untested new company. And somebody always will. It can even be fun. What he condemns is speculation in disguise, and he gives it 3 faces. There is the commuter on the evening train, checking prices with the settled calm of a man reviewing his savings account, speculating while believing he is investing. There is the young man at the brokerage window who has taken it up seriously, with a notebook and a system and real hours. but without the training of the men on the other side of every one of his trades. Taking a thing seriously is not the same as being equipped for it. And there is the hand that empties the rent envelope onto the counter. Risking money you cannot afford to lose. Buying on borrowed money. Graham adds, is speculation whatever you tell yourself. So is buying whatever is hot because it is hot. For anyone who wants the thrill anyway, he leaves instructions. Like a doctor who knows this patient will not quit. Put a small share of your money, the smaller the better, in a separate fund, and call it what it is. When it wins, do not feed it more. Winning is the moment to take money off the table, and never let the two accounts touch. Not in your bookkeeping, and not in your head. The line between the jars is the whole first chapter. Most of the damage in markets, Graham argues, is done by people standing in one jar convinced they are in the other. The definition's hardest test is a future that everybody can see coming. In 1949, everybody could see aviation coming. Picture a man at an airport fence that year, his boy on his shoulders, watching a silver airliner climb. Everything he is thinking is true. Air traffic really is going to multiply for decades. The whole country really will learn to fly. He is not wrong about a single thing he can see from that fence. And on Monday, he calls his broker anyway. Graham wrote about exactly that buyer in his first edition. The man who buys airline shares because he believes their future is even more brilliant than the price already shows. Notice the trap in that sentence. The brilliance was already in the price. The market had stood at the same fence, seen the same sky, and ticketed accordingly. The future then arrived, on schedule. More planes, more routes, more passengers. Year after year, exactly as promised. And in 1970, a record year for traffic, the airlines lost $200 million flying it. They had lost money in 1945, and again in 1961. The industry conquered the sky, and its shareholders paid for the privilege. Even the full-time experts at the big funds, Graham notes, were completely wrong about one of the most visible industries in America. He draws two morals and hands them over plainly. Obvious growth in a business does not translate into obvious profits for investors. And there is no dependable way, not even for experts, of picking the winners in advance and riding them. A true future can still be a bad buy. It depends, always, on the answer to one small question. And the question is not, is it the future? Years before the crash, Graham gave the readers of a women's magazine one sentence of advice. The same kind of magazine that would later promise everybody riches. Buy your stocks, he wrote, the way you buy your groceries, not the way you buy your perfume. At the grocer's, you know what things weigh and you check what they cost. And some days you put the tomato back. At the perfume counter, you are not paying for the ounces. You are paying for the promise. The question the grocer taught you is the one Raskob's readers never asked. And Graham says the really dreadful losses, 1929, and every boom since, happened in exactly the stocks where the buyer forgot to ask it. How much? Not, is General Motors a great company? It was, not, is air travel the future? It was, how much are you paying for what you are actually getting? Which is why the enemy in this book is not who you'd expect. It isn't the crooked broker or the fraudulent company. Those exist, and Graham will show you some. But the losses that matter most have an author closer to home. The investor's chief problem, and even his worst enemy, is likely to be himself. Graham had watched money made and kept by unremarkable people whose temperament suited the work, and he had watched fortunes lost by brilliant people whose temperament didn't. That sentence on the bench is the whole entrance exam. Not brains, not inside information, a definition, and the self-command to live by it while other people are getting rich fast all around you. Everything ahead this season rests on that definition, and Graham did not learn it from a book, because there was no book yet. There was a boy in New York in 1907, sent to the bank to cash a check for his mother, and a teller who looked down and asked a question the boy would spend the rest of his life answering. It was about $5. That story is next.